Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's Democratic candidates for President of the United States. Senator Yang, then Senator Warren, then Mayor Buttigieg.
First, let me say, America, it's great to be back on the debate stage. Thank you. I'm so excited, I want to give every American $1,000 a month. George, the entire capitalism-socialism dichotomy is completely out of date. And the fact is, when people were talking about these economic models, they did not foresee technology getting stronger, more powerful, capable of doing the work of thousands of humans in the blink of an eye. We have record-high corporate profits in this country right now, but people in New Hampshire know what else are at record highs. Mental illness, stress, debt, substance abuse, overdoses, suicides. What we have to do is actually get the markets working to improve our family's way of life. Instead of following GDP and corporate profits off a cliff, we should be measuring our own health and wellness, life expectancy, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, clean air and clean water, how our kids are doing. The way forward is a new human-centered version of capitalism that actually uses the markets to improve our families' lives.
Senator Warren,
Pete, fundamentally, you are missing the lesson of Donald Trump's victory. Donald Trump is not the cause of all of our problems, and we're making a mistake when we act like he is.
That's right.
He is a symptom of a disease that has been building up in our communities for years and decades, and it is our job to get to the harder work of actually curing the disease. Most Americans feel like the political parties have been playing you lose, I lose, you lose, I lose for years. And you know who's been losing this entire time? We have. Our communities have. Our communities' way of life is disintegrating beneath our feet. That's why Iowa, a traditional swing state, went to Trump by almost 10 points. That's why Ohio, a traditional swing state, is now so red that I'm told we're not even going to campaign there. So these communities are seeing their way of life get blasted into smithereens. We've automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs and counting. We're closing 30% of New Hampshire stores and malls, and Amazon, the force behind that, is literally paying zero in taxes. These are the changes that Americans are seeing and feeling around us every day, and if we get to the hard work of curing those problems, we will not just defeat Donald Trump in the fall, but we'll actually be able to move our communities forward.
I know we're going to hear a lot more on this. We're going to move on to Lindsey Davis.
Mr. Yang, you said that the notion of a leader, quote, throwing the president before them in jail is not the way things are done here in the United States and would make it, quote, very hard for any party to govern sustainably moving forward. Does that mean that any alleged misconduct by the president or his administration should not be investigated?
There are, of course, limits, and you have to see what the facts are on the ground after you assume office. But the fact is, if you look around the world, the countries that have thrown past presidents into jail have generally been developing countries. And unfortunately, that's a pattern that once you establish is very, very hard to break. What's a more American tradition? We move the country forward. We don't focus on the mistakes of the leaders that are leaving office. Most Americans do not care about what a particular individual did so much as they care about their families, well-being, their community, their town. That's where Americans focus wants. They want the American president. They want the president, of course, the American president, sorry about that. They want the president to be focused on that, and that's where our attention should be. We should not fall into a pattern that has been disastrous in other countries.
Senator Sanders.
To Mr. Yang, you've said you would decriminalize opioids, but you've also said that you would require all overdose patients to go to mandatory treatment centers for 3 days. Well, right now in New Hampshire, there aren't enough beds in treatment centers and across the country. How would you make sure treatment is available for all overdose patients, and what would you do to fill the gap in the meantime?
That's what we have to change, Monica. I've heard heartbreaking stories from families here in New Hampshire that have been destroyed, torn apart by the opiate epidemic. And you have to look at the companies that profited to the tune of tens of billions of dollars in profits of essentially blood money. As president, we will take back those profits and put them to work right here in New Hampshire so that if you are seeking treatment, you have resources to be able to pursue it. This is not a money problem fundamentally, this is a human problem, but money cannot be the obstacle. This is something that happened on the government's watch. The government allowed this opiate epidemic to spread throughout our communities, and we have to do everything in our power to actually make sure that if you are seeking treatment, you know you're not going to be sent to jail. We have safe injection and safe consumption sites for you. If you have a family member who's struggling, you can refer them and know that they're not going to have criminal penalties as a result. There is so much about this that's endemic to what's happened throughout the country in terms of companies running amok, this hyper-corporate capitalism where if money's on one side in this country and people are on the other side, the money is winning. You can see it with the opiate epidemic. You can see it with the military-industrial complex, the fossil fuel companies. This is what we must change, and that's where I'll lead as president.
Senator.
With respect, you can't regulate away racism with a whole patchwork of laws that are race-specific. What we have to do is heed the writings of Martin Luther King, whose birthday we just celebrated. He said that capitalism forgets that life is social, and what he was championing was a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans of $1,000 a month or more that would end up reshaping our economy in communities of color, make it so that black net worth is not 10% of white net worth in this country, which is the most important number of them all. We can't regulate that away through any other means except by putting money directly into the hands of African Americans and Latinos and people of color to allow businesses to actually flourish and grow in those communities. The only way that will happen is if Black and Latino consumers have buying power, and that is where we have to move as a country.
Mr. Yang, take on that argument and also what he said about reparations.
The median African-American household net worth is projected to be zero by 2053. Things are not getting better for people of color. If anything, they're getting worse because we're in the process of eliminating the most common jobs in our economy. It's something of an economic unnatural disaster, and who suffers most in a natural disaster? People of color, people with lower levels of capital and access to opportunity and education. And while I know we love to champion education here as Democrats, only 33% of Americans are going to attend college. Lower percentage of African Americans. There is no way we can prevent this tsunami from wiping out African American net worth unless we put straight cash into their hands sometime between now and 2053. And it's not just them. It is truck drivers, it is retail clerks, it is call center workers, it is accountants, it is bookkeepers. We are in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, and it's going to hit Black people the hardest. We have to stop nibbling at the edges and actually start solving the real problem.
We've been getting a lot of questions. Welcome back to our debate. Time now for a final question. Each of you will answer it in turn. We'll start with Mr. Yang. And the question is this. According to the Children's Defense Fund, it's been more than 20 years since child poverty was directly addressed in a presidential debate. The year was 1999. The questioner was our friend who may be watching right now, the late Cokie Roberts. Cokie loved the New Hampshire primary, and she asked the candidates in this Republican debate, how will we overcome the scandal of 1/4 of American preschoolers living in poverty in the richest nation on earth? Today, nearly 1 in 5 American preschoolers are still living below the poverty line, even though we've had 10 straight years of economic growth. What does that say to you about where America is today and what we need to do about it?
George, we're in the midst of the most extreme winner-take-all economy in the history of our country. And unfortunately, that extremity is just going to reach unprecedented heights as technology is getting stronger, smarter, more capable all the time. And most of us are not. Most adults feel happy if we stayed about the same on any given day. So if we want to alleviate child poverty, we need to put money directly into the hands of families, particularly single parents. 40% of American children today are born to single moms. 90% of single parents are single moms. And right now, we have fallen into this trap where we have allowed the market to tell us what we are all worth. And what does the market value my wife Evelyn at, or stay-at-home parents around the country? 0. Caregivers taking care of ailing loved ones, like Carl Christensen in Iowa. 0. Volunteers and activists in our communities trying to do something positive, 0. Coaches and mentors helping our kids, 0. Most artists, sorry artists, but it's true, 0. Increasingly local journalists, which is wiping out our ability to have a functioning democracy because you can't vote on something if you actually don't have any news coverage. The mission in this campaign has to be for us to disentangle economic value and human value, say they are not the same things, and make this case to our fellow Americans that we each have intrinsic value as citizens, as human beings, and as owners and shareholders of the richest country in the history of the world.
Mayor Buttigieg.
2020, gang, 2020, 2020, gang, 2020, gang, 2020.
And there you go again, you guys. Andrew Yang has won the New Hampshire debate. Even though he had the least amount of speaking time, even though they cut off his mic, even though he raised his hand and no one called on him, he won the debate. He was the only one with straight answers and to the point.